Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Omega Insight. Tonight's topic is enthusiasm. I called it Enthusiasm, the Final Ingredient. When you think about enthusiasm, picture in your mind what is it that you think about when you think of an enthusiastic person? Now, I'm not talking about the one who speaks so fast that you could hardly understand them, or they have such a high pitch it's a little painful to listen to, or maybe the one who has so much volume that your insides shake. That is not enthusiasm. That doesn't even explain an enthusiastic individual. Those are examples of people who are unable to control their energy and their excitement. Typically, we view them as being an enthusiastic person, but they're missing the mark. And sometimes it's overwhelming for us. As a matter of fact, there's some people who like salesmanship. You feel like you're being sold because they're coming on with so much energy at you. Enthusiasm, the true sense of enthusiasm, is a demonstration of passion. Passion, this is the invisible fire that we use to ignite our creativity. In the physical realm, if you think about when you add heat to ice, it melts and it turns into water. And if you keep adding the heat to the water, then it turns into vapors and steam. Eventually, it'll go to an ethers where you can't even see it anymore. It's still water. We just applied the heat to it. And that's the demonstration of passion. Tonight, I'm using a combination of things that I've learned from Torkham as well as Walter Russell. And Walter Russell has this quote. He says, by ecstatic, I mean the rare mental condition which makes an inspired man so supremely happy in his mental concentration that he is practically unaware of everything that is going around him except to his purpose, but he is keenly and vitally aware of everything pertaining to his purpose. That to me is a great definition of enthusiasm. And much like intimacy, enthusiasm cannot be forced. It's harmful when we force enthusiasm. In the outer realm, it's like a bull in the china shop, untamed. It runs amok and causes havoc. And in the wake of destruction, every inch of that was released. There's destruction when it's untamed and when it's forced. Um, if you try to force it on the inner realms, this much like in intimacy, it turns negative. It begins with impatience when you're enthusiastic and you're inside and you're not uh, maintaining this with when you're trying to force it, you become impatient because it's not happening the way you want it, which leads you to judgment and criticism and depression and perhaps even anger. So those are examples of when you force or attempt to force enthusiasm. Enthusiasm expresses itself through the heart. It's connected to our soul energy, if I could use that word. The power of the will. It's connected to our willpower if we actually want to use that. There's no words, no actions, no art, no writing, no human expression that can uplift you unless you are charged with enthusiasm. All these books behind me that I love that capture my attention, I am fairly certain they are written by an enthusiastic writer. Now, what happens when we do include enthusiasm in our lives, when we do have pure enthusiasm? The first thing is that we get inclusive, meaning that we experience the divine oneness of all, that we want to celebrate the joy and beauty with everyone around us, not just ourselves. It's not like a party for one. Then we have compassion. Compassion comes up, it's an expression of unconditional love. Enthusiasm instills acceptance and peace and harmony. You know, through this with compassion, when I am enthusiastic, I can literally be around someone who's full of anger and judgment and find compassion with them and smile and bring an expression of joy towards them. Enthusiasm brings service. That's where I want to serve. I'm enthusiastic, and it's an expression of humility. Um, it ignites us to want to make a consciousness to evolution. We want to make a contribution to humanity. Of course, I mentioned creativity. When we are in touch with enthusiasm, we are very creative. It's the expression of inspiration, as a matter of fact, which lies just beyond our thoughts. It's that fire which elevates one into the higher realms. Organization, believe it or not, is a part of enthusiasm because it becomes an expression of clarity and deep purpose emerges. When we are organized, we're very focused, intent, and aligned. And I'm not just thinking organized space, like organized in my thoughts. When I'm organized in my intention, it's like a highway to creativity, I guess is the best way I can express it. Enthusiasm also can lead us towards commitment. It's the highest expression of integrity. We have reverence when we're enthusiastic. We have attention to detail when we are enthusiastic. For me, I think enthusiasm is like a magnet. When you're around somebody who is enthusiastic about what they do, you are inspired and drawn to them, but you're inspired to emulate the same thing. If I could go back to George, um, this weekend I was reminded that there's so many people that never met George. Like there's a whole generation where I speak about George, but they never had the opportunity to have him in the classroom. So their experience of George is just through me, which is very shallow compared to the gentleman who used to be in front of the room. And George was a very enthusiastic individual. And I don't mean hype, I mean he had a true sense of passion, a true sense of purpose. And he was very magnetic. People were drawn to him and wanted to be like him, like be like Mike, be like George. People wanted to be around him. They wanted to hear what he had to say. That was all from him being purely enthusiastic and passionate about his life. He had a true sense of purpose in this world. When I think about enthusiasm, I think about, well, if we understand why this is so beneficial, then why don't we have a society filled with enthusiasm? Think about that. Why don't we have a society filled with enthusiasm? If we understand the importance of enthusiasm, why aren't we more enthusiastic? The true sense of enthusiasm. Well, we could easily go to the seven deadly sins, if you want to call it vanity, ego, pride. We could throw in separatism, impatience, judgment, gossip, slander, addictions, hatred, anger, fear, jealousy, and greed. I know that was more than just the seven deadly sins, but those all will destroy enthusiasm. They make one lazy, thin skinned, touchy, in other words, and reactive and self centered when I apply all those other things. So without enthusiasm, one becomes very defensive and reactive, which is what I meant when I said thin skinned. And if that's the case, then how does one increase their level of enthusiasm? If I know that I want to be enthusiastic, how do I increase that? Well, you have to be available. Being available. When I think about being available, it doesn't mean just do nothing. I'm available for whatever happens. No, 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 no. Available is like if you're on a sailboat, you have to open up the sail to capture the wind to be able to drive the sailboat. The same thing with us. We must be open and available, looking for it in all different ways and venues, and do things that allow us to be open. Instead of being reactive, obviously, we want to be patient and compassionate. Um, one of the things that we can do is, I'm going to say this, start every day with gratitude. That's something I love. Gratitude, meditation, prayer helps us be available. Practice being harmless helps us being available. Spread joy. Look for instances where you can spread joy. I talked about this on Friday. Be enjoyable, not only enjoying ourselves, but be enjoyable to be around. That spreads joy. Do not engage or even listen to gossip. Once you start hearing gossip, tune it out, turn it off, remove yourself from judgmental people or judgmental social media. Remove yourself from that. Use your possessions for the good of all. That would be a way to manifest enthusiasm. Think about ways that you could leave the world a better place than when you found it. That leads to enthusiasm. Another great one is give secretly. We're coming into the Christmas season or the holiday season. Give secretly. That increases your enthusiasm. And the last thing I want to say is walk courageously into fearful events. When we walk courageously into fearful events, that courage is going to tap into our passion, which is going to feed our enthusiasm. It's easy to say walk courageously into fearful events, and yet very difficult to do. We have to overcome that naturally, and that will help us develop our enthusiasm. The reason why I say this is the last ingredient, I mean, for the whole gamut of everything we do, if we can remember to sprinkle enthusiasm in all the things that we do, including our relationships, we will have a deeper connecting to our relationships. Can you imagine a relationship that is filled with enthusiasm as to one that is not? You get the individuals who've been together for so long, or the professor who's been teaching at the university. They started out with enthusiasm. They were so excited to share their topic, and they learned everything they could, and they weren't judgmental, and they were open to different a variety of opinions, and they do it year after year after year after year, and before you know it, they're not enthusiastic anymore. Or the person who works at the DMV who has to ask the same questions over and over again, 8 hours a day, 52 weeks in a year. They have lost their enthusiasm for their job. So that to me is sad to think about people who no longer enthusiastic about what they do. They've lost the passion in their life. So remember, we connected passion with enthusiasm. It's important to remember that, to remember to have enthusiasm in everything that we do, including our relationships. With that, I'm going to end here. So thank you for joining me. I hope that you seek your enthusiasm this week, and I look forward to connecting with you for next week's Omega Insight. Have a wonderful week. Bye now.